Chapter 111. Li Hongyuan saw that Jing Wang was obviously speechless at him, but she still answered him seriously. Her expression was really, what should he do? It was as if he wanted to hug her, kiss her, and rub her. His fingers twitched, but he controlled himself and didn't really reach out. This fragrant and fatty meat was right in front of his eyes. When would he be able to eat it openly? The current situation was a bit complicated. Compared with his plan, there was a slight deviation. However, it hadn't reached the point of losing control. He wasn't sure when he could take her down. It wasn't good to be unknown. It was too attractive. It seemed, well, he still preferred to see the radiant Wan. As for the wolves, if there were one, he would kill them. If there were two, he would kill a pair. Wan, what was with this anxious and worried voice? It sounded like he would eat her granddaughter. He really wanted to eat her. Jingwan turned her head and saw her grandmother coming down from the palanquin. The one who came down from the other palanquin was actually her grandfather. Didn't they say that there was an urgent government affair? Grandfather couldn't be needed, but he was a first-rank minister. He should be able to listen in. Madame Luo quickly stepped forward, pulled Jingwan, and subconsciously pulled her behind her. Then she saw Li Hongyuan's dark face and realized that she had overreacted. However, what was done had been done. Greetings, Your Highness. Forget it. Li Hongyuan's body was overflowing with hostility. His eyes were dark. Even if I'm a wolf, tiger, or leopard, I still have a sense of propriety. Madame Luo, you don't have to be so guarded against me. You know what kind of reputation Your Highness has. What I am guarding against is not you, but those rumors. Li Hongyuan's face was extremely dark, but this person was an elderly person and Wan's grandmother, so he really couldn't do anything to her. Instead, he took out his anger on Luo Peishan, who was slowly walking over, and left in a huff. Jingwan stood behind her grandmother and actually felt very happy. Putting aside that her grandmother did not yield an inch to protect her, the main reason was that Jin Qinhuang's temper was not as bad as the rumors said. At the very least, he still respected the elderly. Seeing Li Hongyuan get on Jin Qinhuang Fu's carriage, old Madame Luo slightly breathed a sigh of relief. When facing Jin Qinhuang, although she appeared unyielding on the surface, her heart was actually quite nervous and apprehensive. She was afraid that he would do something to her, but the main thing was that she was worried about really arousing his anger. If he really did something to Wan, that would really be a matter of life and death. Madam, you don't have to do that. Luo Peishan walked in. These people actually saw it the clearest. If Jin Qinhuang's bad reputation outside was 12 points, in reality, it was only 7 or 8 points at most. Old Madame Luo looked at him with dissatisfaction. Is this what this concubine is worried about? I am worried about being seen. All right. Once the third young lady was involved, he would have to stand aside beside his old wife. Luo Peishan also felt that he was in the wrong. He silently stroked his beard and looked at Jingwan. Why did Jin Qinhuang look for you? The matter of the secret skin nourishing recipe. Luo Peishan nodded. At that time, he was also present, so naturally, there was no need to ask. Let you give the recipe to him? No, probably because he found it troublesome. Jin Qinhuang let his granddaughter directly open a shop and buy the finished product for him. And this is also good. If Jin Qinhuang spends money to buy it, I believe that other people will not reach out for it. Third girl, you don't have to suffer a loss. But there is one thing that is not so good. If something goes wrong in the middle, third girl, the responsibility you bear is too big. The harem is originally a place of trouble, and there is not a single day of peace. Opening a shop is also not a simple matter. I have never done this before. The most troublesome thing is that it is hard to find a master who can make the rouge and powder. Moreover, Wan uses flowers and plants, and also needs to be planted in a large area. I'm afraid that this will not be done in a short time. Old Madame Luo followed up. Grandfather and grandmother don't need to worry. In fact, I have already thought about it. It will be fine as long as we transfer all the responsibility. Luo Peishan's eyes lit up, and old Madame Luo more or less understood Jingwan's meaning. Wan, you mean when I go back and make some finished products, I will write down the recipe. Then I will go to Rouge Pavilion. What kind of place was Rouge Pavilion? Even Luo Peishan, a big man, knew about it. Just from the name alone, one would know that it was a place that specialized in selling rouge and powder. There were shops in all the big and small cities in the entire Qi Yuan dynasty, and even in the surrounding countries. The concubines in the harem, except for some of their own secret recipes, all used rouge and powder from Rouge Pavilion. It could be said that Rouge Pavilion was really famous all over the world. Jingwan cooperated with Rouge Pavilion, so it could be said that even if something went wrong, she would have no responsibility at all. She did not have to worry about the workers, the flower fields, or anything else. The only thing she had to do was to come up with the recipe and then sit back and collect the profits. Our third girl is so smart. You came up with a solution so quickly. Jingwan smiled. Grandfather, you flatter me. In fact, I had this plan for a long time, but I didn't find the time. Now the timing is just right. You are really not polite. Aren't you afraid that they will not agree? Jingwan smiled and looked meaningfully at Madame Luo. Grandfather, do you think they will not agree? Madame Luo reached out and patted her. You are getting more and more outrageous. You even dare to make fun of your grandparents? Jingwan immediately dodged nimbly and jumped behind Luo Peishan. She stuck her head out and said with a smile, Grandfather, am I wrong? Luo Peishan looked at Madame Luo's face. Not only did she have fewer wrinkles than her peers, but she also didn't have those spots. He stroked his beard and said with a smile, You're right. Jingwan smiled even more happily, but Madame Luo couldn't help but blush. She spat at Luo Peishan. Old man. Luo Peishan also couldn't help but laugh. His wife was in good health. Although his children and grandchildren were a little unsatisfactory, they were all okay overall. Moreover, he had such a lovely and obedient granddaughter like third girl. He had been in a good mood recently and was full of energy. And to be able to have such a good life today, what more could a husband ask for? Girl, let's go. Let's ride together with grandfather today. Grandfather, you don't have to go to the Ministry of Rights Yamen and can go straight home. And you can go straight home. Since that was the case, Jingwan didn't say anything else. As for why he didn't have to participate in the urgent government affairs, that wasn't something she could ask. Thus, she directly took Luo Peishan's arm and supported him like she usually did with Madame Luo. Grandmother, then I will go with grandfather? Madame Luo looked at Luo Peishan's very satisfied expression and couldn't help laughing and nodding. Madame Luo got into the Luo family's other carriage, but Mama Gong didn't follow. Instead, she chose to follow Luo Peishan's carriage. After the accident at White Dragon Temple, Mama Gong didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Even if they were in the city, it was impossible to prevent an accident when it happened. Luo Peishan's manservant didn't dare to see a middle-aged mama follow the carriage while he sat next to the coachman. Thus, he obediently gave up his seat and walked by himself. Mama Gong glanced at his small body that wasn't very strong. Walking back from here, was he sure he wouldn't be tired and out of breath? However, she didn't refuse. The manservant was puzzled by her gaze, but he felt that there was something wrong with the mama's gaze. Your mama is very conscientious and loyal. Luo Peishan nodded in the carriage. Isn't that the person you found in the capital? Yes, your eldest aunt found her. She put in a lot of effort. Luo Peishan said lightly. As for the daughters-in-law, they naturally had very little contact. It was already good enough that they didn't confuse the daughters-in-law when they met. Eldest aunt is naturally good. Luo Peishan didn't comment. She wasn't his biological daughter, so it was good enough that she put in half of her effort. To find someone who was good in all aspects was a stroke of luck. It was also his third daughter's luck that she should have such a person by her side. There was a battle at the border, but it shouldn't be serious. Grandfather couldn't play any role in it, so he took the initiative to ask the emperor to leave early. The emperor let Min Gear stay. Luo Peishan suddenly said. When Luo Peishan told her this, Jingwan wasn't surprised. That's Cousin Min's good fortune. Is the girl unwilling? Unwilling? No, there's nothing to be unwilling about, and there's nothing to be unwilling about. Even if Cousin Min has a bright future, and I'm poor and miserable. If it's not meant to be, then don't force it. If you insist on what doesn't belong to you, then you're just asking for trouble. If there's anything bad about you, girl, It's that you're too rational and think too thoroughly. If you don't try to ask for some things, how do you know that it's not meant to be in your life? Grandfather's words are right, but your granddaughter's nature is lazy. I don't want to ask for things that slip away from my hands. Grandfather, you should think this way. If it's gone this time, maybe there will be something better that will come to you. That's reasonable. If you're really poor and miserable in the future, then the heavens are really unfair. Grandfather, don't say that. The heavens can't control so many people. Moreover, it's possible that people's fate isn't controlled by others at all. If everyone's fate isn't good and they blame the heavens, then how innocent is the heavens? Luo Peishan laughed heartily. You're a girl with a pile of logic. Grandfather can't win against you. I'm just speaking the truth. Fine, fine, fine. Grandfather won't argue with you. That's right, girl. When grandfather was still in Qi and Fu, weren't you always by your grandmother's side? Why didn't grandfather see you more than a few times? Jingwan stared at him with a "you don't even know the reason" expression, causing Luo Peishan to think that he had become stupid. Slightly annoyed, he bent his finger and knocked on Jingwan's head. Jingwan covered her head and pursed her lips, looking at Luo Peishan with an aggrieved expression. Luo Peishan thought that he had hurt her and was somewhat regretful. Girl, my good granddaughter, does it really hurt? Grandfather wants to take a look? Jingwan giggled as she dodged. No, I'm just playing with you. But grandfather, you can't hit me next time. All right, I won't hit you. Grandfather isn't as smart as our family's Wan. Wan, tell grandfather the reason. Granddaughter was just thinking that grandmother should want grandfather to accompany her more. When you're around, all the other irrelevant people should naturally disappear. Don't you think so? Jingwan blinked. How old were you at that time? How could you think of such things? Luo Peishan looked incredulous. Granddaughter couldn't think of it, but didn't our second branch have a ready-made one? My mother couldn't wait to stick to my father all day long. If my father didn't go out on a day, she would definitely send me away early. Jingwan didn't blush at all when she pushed the blame to her mother. Besides, she wasn't lying. Her mother had really done such things before, and it wasn't just once or twice. That's why granddaughter thought that grandmother must be the same. Luo Peishan's old face was both red and black. He was red because he didn't even realize that such a young granddaughter could think of such things. He was black because those two bastards, they didn't care about you when you were so young. They only knew how to be lovey-dovey all day long. Fortunately, you were a director. Otherwise, you would have been led astray by them. Jingwan thought that she had to be sensible. She wasn't really a child at that time and didn't want to be blinded by her parents. She couldn't make a scene, roll around, and refuse to leave as a third wheel. Even if she was a daughter, it was still annoying. Jingwan hurriedly smoothed her angry grandfather's hair and diverted Luo Peishan's attention. However, Jingwan was even a little gloating when she saw that her grandfather was going to hold a grudge against her father. She was afraid that it would have nothing to do with her father anymore. At that time, she also suffered a lot of psychological damage. Those 2 days were spent in front of flowers and under the moonlight. She was lonely at a young age and had no one to accompany her. Luo Jingyu was also born, but even if she could barely overcome her dislike of her stepsister, she did not want to play with real children all the time. Occasionally, they could be considered teasing, but often, they would play together and cause her to break down. Therefore, now that her father was going to be punished by her grandfather, she couldn't be blamed for being unkind. Along the way, they talked and laughed. Putting aside the unhappiness, Luo Peishan felt particularly comfortable. She was really a considerate little cotton-padded jacket. Madame Luo could hear Luo Peishan's laughter in the carriage behind them and smiled unconsciously. However, when she thought of the Empress's intention, the smile on her face faded and her eyes were covered with haze. If Emperor Lu Qingdi didn't send people, she was afraid that she didn't know how to deal with the Empress. Why couldn't those people be more peaceful? Why did they have to use anyone who was beneficial to them as a pawn? Couldn't they have a little bit of humanity? Thinking of this, Madame Luo laughed at herself. Did she expect those people to have a little bit of humanity? She was really old and confused. Back at the Luo family, Jingwan went back to her small courtyard. Luo Peishan didn't go to the front study, but followed Madame Luo to the backyard. Obviously, he had something to say to Madame Luo. Obviously, Madame Luo also thought of the same thing. So, what they wanted to talk about was actually very clear. Quickly find another person like Chun Jingmin and get engaged? Obviously, this was unrealistic. Maybe it would anger those concubines and princes. After all, Chun Jingmin's situation was different from the one that was hastily decided. The former was already decided in advance. It wouldn't make people angry, but it would only make people feel pity. The latter was obviously done deliberately to stop them. It was so obvious that they disliked them. Were they looking for death or seeking death? Maybe they would do something unreasonable, whether it was for Jingwan, for the Luo family, or to not implicate the innocent. Jingwan's marriage couldn't be decided easily, let alone at will. However, to let Jingwan's marriage become another competition between those people. Whoever won would have the final say. Madame Luo was extremely angry, and Luo Peishan wasn't any better. However, they were powerless. Their thin arms couldn't break the other party's thick legs. Fortunately, it was Jingwan. She did what she was supposed to do. If it was another person, who knows how many times she would cry. Jingwan was in a good mood. She was preparing the things to take to Rouge Pavilion. There were still some things that she had finished before, and there were also a lot of semi-finished products. Now, it didn't take too much time. She could go to Rouge Pavilion tomorrow. When Jingwan was done, her wet nurse brought 2 servant girls to see her. She said that they were bought not long ago and added 2 more servants to Jingwan's place. Now, these 2 were just brought for Jingwan to take a look. If she wasn't satisfied, they would be sent elsewhere and replaced with someone else. The 2 maidservants were a pair of beautiful twin sisters. They looked very similar, but one of them was fairer while the other was darker. Their skin was darker than most people's. Moreover, it was obvious that they were not tanned. They were naturally tanned because whether it was their necks or their hands, the color was very uniform. As for their faces, it was not worth mentioning. These 2 people should be fraternal twins. In fact, when Jingwan's wet nurse was called to pick servants, she only picked the fairer one. She didn't want the darker one at first, but the 2 sisters begged the wet nurse, and the wet nurse brought her back for her young lady to take a look. When the darker servant girl saw Jingwan looking at her, she shrank back uncomfortably. She knew that she was dark and not very likable, but if the young lady couldn't keep her, she wouldn't have a good time. After all, they were deliberately sent to the Luo family to serve the Luo family's 3rd young lady. Young lady, don't drive this servant away. Although this servant is a little ugly, this servant is very capable. This servant can do anything you want. Jingwan laughed. I didn't say I wanted to drive you away. Besides, even if you're a little dark, you're still a little beauty. It was just that her clothes were a little too horrible to look at. In the Qi Yuan dynasty, white was the most beautiful thing. This dark girl also tried to make herself look fairer. She used a lot of powder and put on some rouge. Jingwan wanted to cover her eyes. Her clothes didn't match her skin and naturally made her look dark and ugly. In fact, her facial features were the same as her sister's. She was just a little fairer and looked beautiful. How could she be ugly? Perhaps it was the first time that the girl heard someone call her a beauty. She wasn't sure whether Jingwan was mocking her or thinking that she was beautiful. She looked very helpless. Young lady, don't laugh at this servant. Why would I laugh at you? Go and wash your face. In a while, I'll teach you how to put on makeup that suits you. I guarantee that you'll be as beautiful as your sister. Young lady, are you telling the truth? The other servant girls covered their mouths and laughed. The most lively one, Qingju, directly pulled her hand. Young lady has never lied. Let's go. I'll take you to wash your face. After the 2 of them left, the fairer girl directly knelt down and kowtowed to Jingwan. Thank you, young lady. Quickly get up. Then, Jingwan asked about the origin of the 2, because Jingwan saw that the hands of the 2 sisters were somewhat different from the hands of ordinary girls. The calluses were thicker and the knuckles were thicker. It turned out that the 2 sisters were born in a hunter's family. They learned martial arts and hunting from their father when they were young, especially the black sister, who was very skilled in martial arts. Her archery skills could be said to be 100% accurate. However, later on, the family met with a disaster, and the two sisters were forced to flee. Because the two of them were skilled in martial arts, they were able to move to the capital with the refugees. However, they didn't have a household registration and were also girls. They couldn't find a place to stay and couldn't work as helpers, so they had no choice but to sell themselves as slaves. However, they didn't meet any black-hearted human traffickers. It was just that the two of them were only good at martial arts and strength, but they weren't good at anything else. In addition, the black sister wasn't likable, and the white sister didn't want to be separated from her sister. In these 3 years, not to mention other things, there was no problem with this rule at all. Moreover, although the white sister was only 15 years old, she was very calm and her temperament was more similar to that of Qingzhu. In fact, when Jingwan saw the white sister, she knew the reason why the wet nurse chose her. Qingzhu was already 17 years old, so it was basically impossible for her to get married with Jingwan. Therefore, it was more convenient to choose a girl with a similar temperament to Jingwan. Then in the future, they can stay here with me. First, take the salary of a second-class maid. The wet nurse will arrange for them to take the money directly from me. First, make some clothes. White sister. White sister will be called Bai Xiao in the future. Black sister will still be the same name. I don't need to care about the white sister's clothes, mainly the black sister's clothes. Choose dark purple, gray-green, brownish-red, brownish-yellow, and other colors. I don't want light and soft colors. The embroidery on the clothes should be simple and matched with warmer colors. That's all. The people around Jingwan would not question Jingwan's words. Although Bai Xiao muttered in her heart that her sister would look old-fashioned in those colors, this was the master's absolute order, so they only needed to obey. After washing off the things on her face, the black sister looked much more pleasing to the eye. Jingwan wanted to put makeup on her, which was not appropriate, but other people did not know how to put makeup on people with dark skin. Jingwan was a little itchy to do it. However, Jingwan could not use the things that she usually used, otherwise Nanny Gong would really scold her. However, Jingwan was never a stingy master, so the things that her maids used were absolutely not bad. The black sister's skin was not bad. Besides, as a 15-year-old girl, it was at least 30% worse. Jingwan carefully put makeup on her. She threw away all the rouge and finally asked Qing Mei to comb her hair again. The new black sister looked like a completely different person. Her face was still the same black face, but she looked radiant, lively, and had another kind of indescribable beauty. Nanny Gong's eyes were the sharpest. At a glance, she could see that the black sister now had something that was very attractive to men, but she did not know how to describe it. If she asked, Jingwan would tell her that it was vitality, beauty, and the release of the true wildness. Yes, the black sister was born as a prey. She was skilled in martial arts, so she was different from ordinary girls. Once she released it, it would arouse men's desire to conquer her. Jingwan said that the black sister was still young. When she put makeup on her, she had tried to restrain herself as much as possible. In a few years, when she was fully grown, she would be really charming. When she was at home, she did not pay much attention to it. After she came to the capital city, she was criticized again and again. The black sister began to care about her face and her skin color. She envied her sister's fair and beautiful skin and even gradually became a little self-abased. She was silent, and she was not as reckless as she used to be in the forest. Later, when she was training, she did not care about her life. Seeing this, Bai Xiao's heart ached. In fact, her sister was not ugly at all. She just did not find the right way before. Seeing that everyone was staring at her, the black sister was a little nervous. What's wrong? Jingwan smiled. Go and get the glass mirror. It was the first time that the black sister used a mirror that could reflect people so clearly. Looking at herself in the mirror, she could not believe it. Is this really me? After getting the confirmation again and again, the black sister was so happy that she was about to kneel down and kowtow to Jingwan. Jingwan pulled her and smiled. I didn't do anything. I just restored a little beauty. The black sister was not an inferior and timid girl. The problem that she was originally concerned about disappeared in an instant. Her whole person was glowing with vitality, and even showed signs of returning to her original nature of running in the forest. Her whole person was in high spirits. When her spirit came back, she was naturally more dazzling. If the wet nurse had not been looking at her all the time, she would never have believed that this was the girl she had brought back. But she still clicked her tongue in amazement. If you walk out, those people will definitely not recognize you. But if we say that our girl is amazing, others don't have this ability. The others nodded in agreement. Well, go and do your work. That night, Nanny Gong told Jingwan that in the future, at least one of Bai Xiao and the Black Sister should be with her when she went out, or she should not leave her side. Jingwan also knew that Nanny Gong had been blaming herself because of what happened in White Dragon Temple. She blamed her for not protecting her well and was even a little frightened. Now there were two more girls who knew martial arts, which was probably just what she wanted. However, in less than half a day, Nanny Gong was relieved to let them protect her. Did she trust these two girls so much? Jingwan agreed. The next day, when paying respects to Madame Luo, Jingwan took the Black Sister, a unique beauty, out to show off. When this group of people was bought, Madame Luo had seen them once. Because the Black Sister was very unique, she naturally noticed her. However, she did not look like a crafty girl. Since she had already entered the mansion, she should keep her. But she did not expect that when they met again, she was not only in the third girl's courtyard, but also completely changed. She's a good girl. In the future, she will serve your girl with all her heart. Don't worry, Madame Luo. I will serve you well. Madame Luo nodded again. She had been taught the rules well. She also asked Madame Luo about going out, and naturally, she agreed. Jingwan knew that Luo Jingying had been looking at her, but she did not say anything. It could be seen that she would not make trouble for the time being. When they went out, Jingwan was going to choose two of the four maids. However, Qing Zhu took the initiative to ask Bai Xiao to replace her. It seemed that she also understood the meaning of Bai Xiao's existence. Jingwan did not object. The Rouge Pavilion was located in the most prosperous area of the East District. Although there was no obvious distinction between the wealthy and the commoners in the capital, most of the valuable things were still concentrated in the East District. Most of the people who came in and out of the Rouge Pavilion were dressed in luxurious clothes. The curtain was lifted a little, and Jingwan looked at the bustling scene outside. There were many people like Jingwan coming and going, so she did not have to worry too much. Young lady, we have arrived at Rouge Pavilion. Jingwan alighted from the horse carriage. No matter what, there were fewer people entering Rouge Pavilion than she expected. Wasn't it famous? Perhaps Nanny Gong saw Jingwan's confusion, so she explained, Young lady, there are several Rouge Pavilions in the capital city. The things in this place are the most expensive and the best. Rouge Pavilion has been around for so many years, so basically everyone knows what is in it. Basically everyone has something they are used to. When they run out of things, they can just ask the servants to come and buy more. There is no point in staying there, so after a long time, it has become like this. Upon closer inspection, it was true that many of the well-dressed and exquisitely dressed girls were actually servant girls. Most of them came and went in and out alone. Jingwan and the others entered the store. The store was filled with dazzling items. There were actually quite a number of people buying things. Just as Granny Gong had said, if they wanted anything, they just had to say it. The waitresses in the store would take the things for them. They paid and left. Basically, no one stayed. The waitresses in this shop were naturally very perceptive. When they saw Jingwan and the others, they could tell that they were new customers. Hence, a waitress came up to them with a smile. Young lady, how may I help you? I am looking for your shopkeeper. Jingwan said bluntly. The waitress was slightly taken aback. Young lady, please wait for a moment. She asked another waitress to go upstairs, while she led Jingwan and the others to a place inside. Jingwan did not expect that there would be an elegant little compartment here. Through this little compartment, Jingwan knew that the person who decorated this place was very interesting and tasteful. Jingwan looked at the things on display in the treasure pavilion. They were not expensive, but each one was very exquisite and had their own uniqueness. It seems that third young lady Luo likes the things here. Jingwan turned around and saw a middle-aged woman. She obviously had the dignified temperament of a noble woman. but the way she dressed was dusty. Of course, this was only the opinion of Nanny Gong and the others. In Jingwan's eyes, she did not feel that way. She just wore a little thinner, and her clothes were a little tighter. Furthermore, her figure was a little better. She was not particularly beautiful, and there was a red mole below the corner of her right eye. It was not big, but it was so red that it seemed like it was going to drip blood. This was a very charming woman. Not to mention when she was young. Even now, she was very popular among men. "Madam, do you know me?" The woman laughed and trembled with laughter. "Oh, it's the first time that someone called me madam. You can call me Yin Yang. That's what others call me. I was also there on the birthday of great elder princess." Jingwan nodded. "Yin Yang, are you the shopkeeper here?" "No, but Rouge Pavilion is mine," Yin Yang said with a smile. "Oh, it seems that I came at the right time today." Yin Yang's smile deepened. Few people were not surprised to know that she was the owner of Rouge Pavilion, especially a little girl who was born in the backyard of a mansion. However, it was also possible that she had limited knowledge and did not know what Rouge Pavilion meant. However, judging from her performance in Great Elder Princess's mansion, she did not seem to be a short-sighted person. "Miss, please sit down." Then, she asked the waitress to serve Jingwan tea. "Miss, you came to see the shopkeeper as soon as you came here. What's the matter?" At Jingwan's signal, Bai Xiao put the wooden box in her arms on the table and opened it. "These are some things I often use. Yin Yang, can you take a look?" Yin Yang narrowed her eyes slightly. She had basically known the purpose of Jingwan's visit. "No need to look at them. I can look at you." She took out a flat jade bottle and tried to open the lid, but failed. Qing Lan stepped forward, twisted the lid twice, and opened it. Yin Yang stroked the two threads on the edge of the jade bottle and said, "What a delicate idea." Then, she dipped her finger in some milky white lipstick and gently rubbed it on the back of her hand. There was a faint camellia fragrance. Then, she looked at Jingwan's face and hands and said, "No wonder you dare to bring these things to Rouge Pavilion. So, what do you think, Yin Yang? It's such a good thing. If I refuse it, I may regret it for the rest of my life." Yin Yang took out a box of various skincare products. The paper under the box was the real treasure. "I want 30% of the profits of all the recipes I give, and I don't care about the rest." Yin Yang sighed helplessly and said, "You're really free and easy to leave everything to others." "That's because I'm afraid of trouble. Otherwise, 2 years ago, your Rouge Pavilion might have a difficult opponent." "That's really lucky." Although she said so, Jingwan could feel that she didn't take it seriously. After all, how could she, a woman, keep the Rouge Pavilion as a money tree without any support? "I have a little suggestion. Yin Yang, you can listen to it. Of course, if you're willing to accept it, you can accept it. If not, just ignore it." Third Miss Luo's suggestion to Great Elder Princess caused such a sensation. "I think it's definitely not a wise decision to ignore it." "You're flattering me, Yin Yang." Jingwan just talked about the packaging. There was no need for publicity at all. After all, Rouge Pavilion was so famous. Fine packaging was definitely a great way to increase the value of goods. When the quality was improved, the value of the goods might soar 10 or even 100 times. Wooden boxes, silver boxes, gold boxes, jade boxes, and those inlaid with gems. Wooden boxes can also be made of different kinds of wood, and then they can be packaged in a set of several kinds. As for the packaging of a single item, there can be a relatively common box, and naturally, there can also be a special box that belongs to a certain person. Yun Yang's eyes were full of splendor. She looked at Jing Wan with disbelief. "Little girl, you're really amazing. If I let you do anything, I'm afraid your companions won't have anything to eat." "You're exaggerating. I can only come up with some ideas. In fact, I know nothing about it." Yun Yang shook her head with a smile and then went to write the contract. 40% of the profits? Yun Yang, it's too much. It's not much. The value of your ideas is far more than the 10% profits. Although I'm a businesswoman, sometimes I just want to do what I want. Then it would be impolite to refuse. Then Luo Sangunyang, "Do you have any other requests? For example, if your family comes to buy, I'll charge you 10% of the selling price. However, everyone has a monthly quota. The excess will be the original price. I can't let Yin Yang suffer a loss. Oh, by the way, if my family's fourth sister comes to buy, you can raise the price a bit. Even if she took out the money, Luo Jingying wouldn't be able to afford it. As for whether Luo Jingying would rob other people, it was none of Jingwan's business. After all, except for Yin Yang's, Luo Jingxiang's things were not easy to rob. However, Yin Yang didn't have much money. Would she be willing to give all of her share to Luo Jingying? Chapter 112. Don't say that Jingwan was black-hearted and set such a high price for the things she took out. From the beginning, her things could not be sold as commoners. How could you try to sell things that were sent into the palace as commoners? In this way, she might as well set the price as high as possible. No matter where it was, there was a mentality that the higher the price, the better the item. The more unique it was, the more it could stand out from the masses. This often meant that it had an extraordinary status. Many people also enjoyed the unique sense of superiority of, I have something that you don't have. If they pushed it out in this way, there was no need to worry that no one would buy it. As for those who did not have the money but wanted to pretend to be rich, let's set up a system. There are some things that cannot be sold even if you have the money. This shouldn't be difficult for Yin Yang, right? After all, Rouge Pavilion has been in the capital for so long. You must know the background of those madams and ladies. As for how to set the threshold, Yin Yang should know better than me. Yin Yang smiled charmingly. Miss is really kind. There is no need to be so polite to those vain people who overestimate themselves. Even if they lose their family fortune, it is because they asked for it. Rouge Pavilion's original items may be inferior to Mrs., but they are still good things. However, even if they are the best, they may not be suitable for everyone. Some people simply do not understand that the most suitable for them should be the best, but they choose the most expensive ones. Not only is it a waste of money, it may also cause them to suffer. In the end, they will blame it on Rouge Pavilion. This servant is too lazy to care about them. In a place like the capital, there were as many officials and nobles as dogs. There were too many people who could not be offended. Yun Yang dared to speak so arrogantly. Her backing was probably not small. It must be said that the strongest backing was none other than the person who was in charge of the world. Yun Yang was a middle-aged woman, but she was still charming. She was even more charming than many young ladies. Could it be that she was a Le Qingdi who had some unclear first, second, third, and so on? For a moment, her imagination ran wild. Yun Yang saw that Jingwan was looking at her in a daze. She touched her face and revealed a particularly charming smile. Could it be that this servant is especially beautiful today? And even Miss has been charmed. Jingwan, who was being teased, didn't have the slightest self-awareness. She smiled in all seriousness. Yes, Yun Yang is indeed very charming. One had to know that sincere compliments from the same gender were often more pleasing than compliments from the opposite gender. Obviously, Yun Yang was really pleased by Jingwan, and once again, she laughed until she was trembling. You are such a lovely girl. No wonder great elder princess, who doesn't like to get involved in other people's affairs, likes you so much. Yun Yang is flattering me. Jingwan became more and more interested in Yun Yang's origin. Because Yun Yang urged her to stay, Jingwan stayed in the Rouge Pavilion for a while longer. The tea and snacks were very good. During the period, they also talked about a lot of other things. Then, Jingwan found that Yun Yang was actually a talented woman. She knew history, was good at poetry and music, and was also very good at painting and calligraphy. The paintings on the wall in the compartment were the best proof. When Jingwan was looking at the wall, Yun Yang was really looking at Jingwan. It's good to be young. After all, I'm old. No matter how much I raise you, you can't be so tender. In the future, any man who marries you will be really lucky. Yun Yang smiled meaningfully. Jingwan pretended that she didn't understand. Nanny Gong coughed discontentedly. Yun Yang glanced at Nanny Gong and curled her lips. She had seen too many people, and Nanny Gong deliberately showed something that she usually hid. How could Yun Yang not see that this nanny was not an ordinary person. Since Miss Luo can be so beautiful, it's definitely not as simple as using these things. What other secret methods do you have? Can you share them with me? To say that Jingwan could be well, it was not only because of those things. If it was really so magical, she didn't need to do anything else. She just needed to apply those things on her body. Then, all the people who had used these things would be like Jingwan. Then, the beauty industry would reach the peak at this time, and there would be nothing left for the later generations. In fact, Jingwan didn't use many things to maintain her skin. They just played an auxiliary role. Most of the time, she nourished her skin internally. Her endocrine was balanced and there was no toxin in her body. In this way, it was difficult for her to look bad. Therefore, Jingwan was not stingy. She simply told Nanny Gong some methods to maintain her health. In fact, it was not only Jingwan and Nanny Gong who knew these methods. Many people knew them. It was just that what Jingwan knew was combined with what Nanny Gong knew. In addition, Nanny Gong put in a lot of effort on her, so the best effect was achieved. Therefore, after Jingwan said those things, Yun Yang thought that Jingwan was hiding something. However, she was not a narrow-minded person. She didn't have a bad opinion of Jingwan because of this. Anyway, she was just a little girl. I have something to do, so I can't keep you here. After the things are made, I'll ask someone to send them to you. If there is something not satisfactory, you can tell me. Jingwan also saw that Yun Yang didn't believe her, so she didn't say anything more. She just got up and left. Yun Yang asked someone to pack a large bag of various rouge, face powder, and creams from Rouge Pavilion for her. Of course you don't like these, but there should be many people who like them. After all, there are several kinds of them, which are used by the concubines in the palace. Yun Yang smiled and winked. Jingwan saw what was in the bag with her own eyes. After thinking about the selling price she had seen before, she roughly calculated that it was close to 10,000 taels of silver. Yun Yang gave it to her without blinking her eyes. Seeing this, Yun Yang was quite speechless. They were all rich people. Jingwan, who thought that she was a little rich woman, would never think of herself as a rich person in the future. Jingwan, who was shocked, left Rouge Pavilion expressionlessly. She didn't think about it. She gave away treasures like the 18th scholar just like that. That was more valuable, okay? After Jingwan and the others left, the smile on Yun Yang's face disappeared. At that moment, her aura became fierce. Even though she was still wearing clothes, you couldn't feel the slightest bit of the aura of a prostitute. If Jingwan saw her now, she would probably use 2 words to describe her, queen. She casually ran her fingers through her hair. Take the things away and let the masters quickly make it. Then, make a place for it in the shop. As for what third Miss Luo said, you all heard it. I don't think I need to tell you the specifics. Yes, mistress. The 2 maids beside her respectfully replied. Yun Yang picked up the teacup and took a sip. Her movements were elegant and noble, and her expression was somewhat unpredictable. In the Luo family's carriage. Nanny, do you know the origin of Yun Yang? Jingwan asked. Nanny Gong's expression was somewhat grave and hesitant. It was the first time Jingwan saw such an expression on her face. Jingwan became more and more curious. What's wrong? Does Nanny not know? Or is it inconvenient to say? Young miss, if this servant's guess is correct, Yun Yang's identity is not ordinary. Nanny Gong looked at the 2 maids in the carriage. It's not good to know too much. Jingwan understood that Yun Yang was not like what she thought. She had the emperor as her lover, so she must have some other background. Yun Yang was a woman who looked like she was tainted with the dust of prostitution. She was the kind of person that the women in the inner residence hated the most. However, they didn't refuse the things from the Rouge Pavilion. On one hand, it might be because the things from the Rouge Pavilion were really good. On the other hand, it might be because they knew that Yun Yang wasn't an indecent person. As for Yun Yang's identity, she would have to find another time to ask in private. Jingwan returned to the Luo family. Then, she bumped into Luo Jingying in the garden. Jingwan wasn't sure if she was waiting for her. However, this time, she was very well-mannered and well-mannered. Naturally, she saw the things in the maid's hands. Rouge Pavilion was the best place. How could Luo Jingying not know about it? She had only been there once. After that time, she didn't dare to go again. It wasn't that the things were bad. If she could, she would have emptied the place. However, the cheapest small box of rouge there cost more than 100 taels. Moreover, such a small box could barely last for a month. Third sister went out this time and bought a lot of things. Fourth sister, are you talking about these? I didn't buy them. The owner of the Rouge Pavilion gave them to me as a gift. Third sister is really likable. The things that cost at least a few thousand taels were given as a gift. She is really generous. Yes, Yin Yang is really generous. Yin Yang? Although Rouge Pavilion was a place that sold things for women, it was such a big business that it couldn't be a private property of a woman, right? Luo Jingwan was puffing herself up at her own cost, or she didn't dare to admit it. Fourth sister doesn't know that the owner of Rouge Pavilion is called Yin Yang. I thought this was a well-known thing. Of course, younger sister knows. Could she admit that she had been in the capital for a few years and still be so ignorant? Jingwan nodded. The reason why Yin Yang is so generous is all thanks to fourth sister. Because of fourth sister, Jin Wang found out about third sister's secret skincare recipe and wanted to give it to noble consort Su. However, Jin Wang didn't want the recipe, he wanted the finished product. But the things in third sister's hands, people who used them all said that they were good. They felt that when the time came, the people who used them wouldn't only be noble consort Su. No matter how capable third sister is, you can't make that much. It's too troublesome to open your own shop, so you simply went to Rouge Pavilion. Unexpectedly, you just happened to run into Yin Yang. Sigh. Elder sister is still troubled over how to deal with it. After all, fourth sister also knows that elder sister usually doesn't use these things. You don't want to give them all to me. Luo Jingying almost shouted out these words. Fortunately, she held it in, but she pursed her lips and gritted her teeth. She didn't open her mouth for a long time. She was worried that once she opened her mouth, she would lose her composure again. What really made her eyes red was that 40% bonus. 40%, she didn't know how much it was, but she was sure that even if Luo Jingwan didn't do anything for the rest of her life, it was enough for her to squander. Fourth sister tried every means to dig out the secret recipe from my hands. Now that she got what she wanted, I believe that it won't be long before Rouge Pavilion will release the first batch. However, listening to Yin Yang's words, it will probably be a bit expensive. It will probably be a few times more expensive than the ones in her shop. A dozen times, or even 100 times more expensive. Fourth sister, have you prepared the money? Luo Jingying's fingernails dug deeply into her palms, but she didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. Was this the result of all her calculations? Not to mention that she was locked up for 10 to 20 days. She couldn't afford to use those things now. She suddenly regretted. She regretted being so impulsive. If she had held back and waited a little longer, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out this way. She clearly wanted to get the secret recipe and make sure that Luo Jingwan didn't get any benefits. However, she didn't achieve any of her goals. Jingwan chuckled as she approached Luo Jingying. After all, it's my recipe. If my family buys it, it will only cost 10% of the price. Of course, no one has a fixed amount every month. Luo Jingying's face lit up with joy. However, that doesn't include you. If you buy it, it will cost 10 times more than the original price. Luo Jingwan, fourth sister, lower your voice. You just came out of the small temple. Don't tell me you want to be locked up again? Luo Jingying was filled with hatred, but she couldn't do anything to Jingwan. I heard that third sister's engagement was broken off. Jingwan's smile became playful. Her pink lips parted slightly. Childish. Then, she brushed past Luo Jingying. Luo Jingying trembled with anger. She didn't expect that she didn't manage to hurt Luo Jingwan, that little bitch. Oh, that's right. There's one more thing that fourth sister should know in advance. Jingwan stopped after taking 2 steps. Yesterday, Li Ruyu's status as a princess was revoked by His Majesty. There will probably be an official imperial edict about this matter in 2 days. Luo Jingying's body couldn't help but sway. The servant girl beside her hurriedly reached out to help her, but she slapped her hand away. Luo Jingying didn't know the reason, But Luo Jingwan just had to tell her at this time. She couldn't help but let her imagination run wild. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. And the more wrong it was, the more she let her imagination run wild. Originally, because she had been locked up for too long, her body was weak. Now, she felt like she was about to collapse. After walking far away, Jingwan looked back. Her expression didn't change at all. As the saying goes, the sins of heaven can be forgiven, but the sins of one's own are the hardest to bear. Luo Jingying brought this upon herself. On the other side, Luo Jingxiang originally wanted to avoid Luo Jingying. She didn't expect third sister to come back. Thus, she heard every word of their conversation. She touched the back of her left hand with her right hand and sneered in her heart. She was the only one who went against third sister. Look at the other sisters. Which one of them didn't get third sister's favor? Now, she went for wool and came home shorn. She should have bought those things at a low price. But even if it was only 10% of the original price, she probably couldn't buy them every month. However, it didn't matter. She was going to get married in less than half a month. She could give her share to others. Not only could she please her in-laws, she might even be able to exchange it for benefits. In short, she just didn't want to give her Luo Jingying. If she gave it to others, she would at least return a smile. But if she gave her Luo Jingying, even if you gave her your own flesh and blood, she would probably still dislike the fishy smell. In that case, since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, there was no need to be submissive to her Luo Jingying. That's right. Luo Jingxiang was going to get married in less than half a month. It would be 10 days after Luo Jingbo married Sanijia. However, everyone in the Luo family was preparing for Luo Jingbo's wedding. It was as if she had completely forgotten about it. She didn't really care. After all, she was only a concubine's daughter. Among the many girls in the Luo family, she was one of the few with the lowest status. The other few were still very young. If she had the same attitude as Luo Jingying, she was afraid that she would have died long ago. Luo Jingxiang openly left from behind the flowers. She was clearly telling Luo Jingying that she had heard everything. Luo Jingying wanted to vent her anger on this concubine's older sister. Unfortunately, she had the heart but was powerless. She shouted twice, but Luo Jingxiang simply ignored her. Luo Jingying almost had a heart attack. Now, even this bitch who used to wag her tail behind her dared to show her disdain. She was really too kind to her in the past. Jingwan returned to the hiding house and divided the rouge and powder she brought back. Her mother, aunts, including Mrs. Liu, everyone had a share, but there were differences in quality. Then, she gave Luo Jingxiang a share. As for the other sisters, Luo Jingyu was 13 years old. In this place, she had already entered the ranks of the big girls, so she also reserved a share for her. Even so, there was still a lot left. She wanted to give it to her maidservants, but Mama Gong didn't allow it. The maidservants used the same things as their masters. There were no rules. If other servants in the mansion knew about it, there would be more trouble. So, the maidservants didn't want it. Thus, Jingwan decided to give her eldest cousin sister and her aunts a portion each. She gave her eldest cousin sister's portion to her eldest aunt, so that she could send someone to deliver it to her. She gave her aunt's portion to her grandmother. As for the remaining portion, she gave half to her mother, so that she could give it to her close friends. She gave the rest to her grandmother, so that she could decide who to give it to. As a result, all the maidservants in the hiding house went out together to send the gifts to each branch. All the servants in the mansion saw this and were all amazed by the third young lady's wealth. Jingwan took advantage of this time to ask Mama Gong about Yun Yang's identity. Young lady, if I'm not wrong, Yun Yang is His Majesty's little aunt. She was once married to the northern Xiongnu people for peace. Although Jingwan had thought highly of Yun Yang's identity as much as possible, she was still shocked by Mama Gong's words. This princess was very famous in the Qi Yuan dynasty. She had been a figure for more than 30 years. These young ladies had heard of her glorious achievements. Princess Heong was only a few years older than Lu Qingdi. She was the daughter of Lu Qingdi's grandfather. It could be said that she was raised by Lu Qingdi's father. Although this princess was a woman, She had the heart of a man. Of course, it didn't mean that she had the ambition of coveting the throne. It was just her temperament. She knew everything that a woman should know. She also knew everything that a woman should know. She knew how to play with books, swords, and spears. Most importantly, she was uninhibited by nature. Li Ryu was nothing compared to this princess. To her, these were not worth mentioning. Chapter 113. Princess Hyang didn't choose a prince consort even when she was 18 years old. It was not only because she had a bad reputation and kept several male companions, but also because she didn't care about those so-called young talents, let alone those who could become her prince consort. According to her, those who couldn't even compare with her in terms of appearance shouldn't dream of marrying her. It would be better if she didn't kill him on the wedding night. Princess Hyang was raised by her brother like a daughter. At that time, even the empress had to give in to her, let alone discipline her. As her brother, he had a headache and was helpless. Could he let his sister be like this for the rest of her life? Later, the northern Xiongnu people suddenly proposed to marry the princess of the Qi Yuan dynasty as their empress and establish friendly relations. In the eyes of the Qi Yuan dynasty, the northern Xiongnu people were a barbarian land. Not only was it barren, but they were also a group of barbarians who drank blood and ate fur. They went there to suffer because there was no royal princess. Originally, they were ready to choose a daughter of a minister and confer the title of princess to go there. Unexpectedly, Princess Hyang took the initiative to stand out. Even if Princess Hyang stayed in the Qi Yuan dynasty and did whatever she wanted, she had her brother to back her up. After her brother died, she still had her nephew to back her up. No one could do anything to her. However, she took the initiative to choose this time to marry the northern Xiongnu people. Of course, her brother strongly disagreed. No one knew what Princess Hyang said to him, but he relented. The courtiers who had a bad impression of her changed their attitude in an instant. A princess who could sacrifice herself for the country, no matter how bad she was in other aspects, was worthy of respect. Princess Hyang, who was dressed in luxurious clothes, looked back at the capital. Her eyes were shining, and her lips were curled. She was full of vigor. Her face, which was not very beautiful, bloomed the most dazzling charm in an instant. At that moment, everyone felt that she was not a princess who was going to marry the northern Xiongnu people, but a king who was going to conquer that land. All the courtiers and people knelt down. Princess Hyang might not have been accepted in the Qi Yuan dynasty, but she was very popular among the northern Xiongnu people. She made the northern Xiongnu people crazy for her. Princess Hyang even dared to openly keep a gigolo in the Qi Yuan dynasty, so she naturally didn't mind being entangled with the northern Xiongnu nobles. Even though the northern Xiongnu king was furious, he couldn't bear to kill her. Princess Hyang played them in the palm of her hand and provoked them to fight among themselves. As for the northern Han king, the man who rightfully occupied her, he naturally became the public enemy of everyone. His sons joined forces to kill him. Thus, the northern Han people fell into a struggle for the throne. Princess Hyang only said that she would only submit to the strongest man and then watch them fight to the death and leisure. Just as there was a result, Qi Yuan sent out their troops at this time. The new northern Xiongnu king was furious and wanted to kill Princess Hyang, but Princess Hyang smiled carelessly. The northern Xiongnu king grabbed her tightly and pressed his blade against her neck. Blood seeped out of her skin, but Princess Hyang still had the mood to tease him. There is a saying in Qi Yuan, if you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. Since I married the northern Xiongnu people, I am naturally one of them. My king, you can kill me or torture me as you wish. These words dispelled the northern Xiongnu king's killing intent. After showing off his beast desires, he took Princess Hyang with him. Then, at the crucial moment of the battle, Princess Hyang killed the northern Xiongnu king. In that battle, Qi Yuan naturally won and almost destroyed the northern Xiongnu people. However, it was a pity that the northern Xiongnu people were all martial artists. They were brave and good at fighting, so it was very difficult to destroy them. The northern Xiongnu people suffered heavy losses. It could be said that it was the biggest victory over the northern Xiongnu people in the past hundreds of years, including the previous dynasty. It severely weakened the Qi Yuan's biggest enemy in the north. Princess Hyang's contribution was indispensable. It was enough to be recorded in the history books and praised by future generations. However, everyone thought that after Princess Hyang killed the northern Han king, she lost her life in the hands of those generals. In short, there was no news of her at all. Who would have thought that not only was this princess alive and well, she had returned to Qi Yuan and was even living happily. If Yun Yang was really Princess Hyang, then it was natural that she could protect Rouge Pavilion and no one dared to touch it. Her backer was indeed Lu Qingdi, but their relationship was completely different from what Jingwan had thought. Whoever dared to touch Rouge Pavilion would definitely have their hands chopped off by Lu Qingdi. Of course, in the official history of Qi Yuan, only Princess Hyang's achievements would be recorded, and her romantic history would appear in many unofficial histories and novels. Even in the novels created with her as the model, no one would deliberately blacken her name. This woman was a legend. Princess Hyang should be in her 50s, almost 60 years old. But Yun Yang seems to be in her early 40s. So I'm just guessing. I'm not sure. However, the prince would never be wrong. Since he said that the boss of Rouge Pavilion was Princess Hyang, it could not be wrong. But she did not expect that she would meet her on the first day when she went there. So many people deliberately wanted to find her, but failed. Then why do you think Yun Yang is Princess Hyang? I once saw a portrait of Princess Hyang in the palace by accident. It was very similar to Yun Yang. Jingwan glanced at Nanny Gong. This kind of portrait should not be seen by everyone. When Nanny Gong was in the palace, she should not be the kind of aunt in charge who had little power. However, Nanny Gong knew martial arts. Ordinary aunts in the palace did not know these things. Could it be that Nanny Gong knew? Jingwan coughed softly and dispelled those messy thoughts. If that's the case, Nanny Gong's guess is very likely. Then what do you want to do in the future? Of course, I'll do what I should do and pretend that I don't know. Besides, this is the first time I go there, and I've basically settled everything. I'm not interested in the things in Rouge Pavilion. I won't wander around if I have nothing to do. So the chances of meeting her will be very small. Nanny Gong nodded. She was not in a good situation now. It was fine to have a dangerous person like the prince, but it was not a good thing to provoke Princess Hyang. When Jingwan was talking to Nanny Gong, there was a rumor in the mansion that Third Miss did not like her eldest sister-in-law. Last time, Third Miss did not give First Young Madam a share of the cosmetics she gave to other girls. This time, except for the younger girls, all the madams above have a share. Even First Young Madam, who is married, has a share. Only First Young Madam and Fourth Miss do not have a share. Third Miss has always been at odds with Fourth Miss, so it's reasonable that she did not give Fourth Miss anything. But what about First Young Madam? Was she disliked like Fourth Young Lady? When Third Miss came to the capital with Old Madam, First Young Madam gave her a gift. That was a bracelet worth more than 1,000 taels. She really gave? What are you talking about? Luo Jingda came back and heard the maids talking. He frowned slightly. The maids were shocked and hurriedly saluted. First Young Master, go and do something. Don't stand around and gossip. Yes. The maids hurriedly left. Luo Jingda entered the room and saw his pregnant wife leaning on the big pillow. He was a little unhappy. What's wrong? He walked forward and sat down beside her. He carefully touched her belly. Is the child bothering you again? No. Little Wang also told him that she did not get any rouge or face powder. You don't have anything? Luo Jingda was quite speechless. Is it just a matter of a little thing? Little Wang raised her voice. Except for me, only fourth sister, and I don't have any. Is it because fourth sister and I are disliked by her? The servants will make up stories about me. They will say that I must have done something bad to annoy her. I can't bear such a reputation. Don't be agitated. Calm down, Luo Jingda comforted her. So, this matter was not as trivial as he thought. I know a little about third sister's character. Except for fourth sister, she has never targeted anyone. You have been taking care of the fetus and have only seen her a few times. Naturally, there can be no hatred between you. There may be some misunderstandings or reasons that we don't know. Don't worry. Let me ask her about it. Ask? How? If you go to her, people may think that I am short-sighted and only care about her things. Are you stupid? Of course I will ask third brother. You can't go by yourself. Forget it. Third brother will get married the day after tomorrow. He is busy. It is difficult to bother him for such a small matter. Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out myself. Okay. I will do as you say. Just be careful. Don't get angry. What if you hurt the child? Don't worry. I am not really angry. The husband and wife talked about other things, and the atmosphere quickly eased. Thus, other than the people of the second branch, everyone else knew about this matter. After Madame Luo heard it, she said, Wang has always been careful and considerate. She will not make a mistake in this matter. She must have her reasons. When I pay respects to her tomorrow, I will ask her. Pass the word that this matter is strictly forbidden. Whoever dares to gossip will be severely punished. With Madame Luo's words, naturally, no one dared to say anything. However, many people muttered in their hearts that Madame Luo would protect third young lady no matter what. Thus, when Jingwan went to pay her respects the next day, she had a rare chance to see her eldest cousin-in-law. She saw that her eldest cousin-in-law's belly had grown a little bigger. Although she knew that her eldest cousin-in-law's condition wasn't very good and she was a little scared, she was still happy that she had a new life. Jingwan couldn't help but smile. Little Wang sure was puzzled. She did not look like she had a problem with her. As the saying goes, one does not hit a smiling person. Even if little Wang sure still had a knot in her heart, she basically answered all of Jingwan's questions. In fact, most people were puzzled about this matter. Madame Luo called Jingwan to her side and said a few words. Then, she directly asked, You sent things everywhere yesterday. Why didn't your cousin-in-law have any? Isn't cousin-in-law pregnant? Jingwan blurted out without thinking. Madame Luo's bluntness was surprising, and Jingwan's answer was even more surprising. What did this have to do with pregnancy? What's wrong with being pregnant? Don't you need to wear makeup? It was common knowledge that pregnant women could not wear makeup. All right. Jingwan suddenly realized that this was common knowledge from her previous life. It was not common knowledge here. She also finally understood why cousin-in-law looked at her strangely when she came in. Jingwan wanted to cover her face. It seemed that she had accidentally made a low-level mistake. Why didn't Nanny Gong remind her? However, because it was difficult to explain, Jingwan decided to play dumb. Aren't pregnant people not allowed to wear makeup? She asked in confusion. This time, more than one person was paying attention to her words. Wan, who told you that pregnant women can't wear makeup? Jingwan frowned and pondered. I don't think I heard it from anyone. I should have read it in a book, right? Is that not the case? I thought that everyone knew about this. Wan, tell grandmother, where did you read it? What book was it? Grandmother, this is difficult for me. You know, when I was in Qian Manor a few years ago, I read a lot of books, and they were very miscellaneous. I thought that some things were well known, so I just glanced at it. How could I remember what book it was? I also don't remember when I read it. You're right. When she was in Qian Manor, other than those books that were absolutely forbidden for girls, she really did not control Jingwan much. Wan, do you still remember why pregnant women can't wear makeup? It had to be said that she had a great-grandchild in little Wang Shi's stomach, so Madame Luo naturally valued it very much. As for little Wang Shi and little Wang Shi, needless to say, they also valued this child very much. They could not help but look at Jingwan. It seems that it's mainly because there's something in the makeup that's not very good for people. It's fine for ordinary people, but if pregnant women come in contact with it too much, it may affect the child in the stomach. As for other things, I don't know if it's the same, so I didn't dare to give it to sister-in-law. Jingwan looked at little Wang Shi and covered her face with her hands in horror. I just thought that sister-in-law put on a little makeup when she went out and washed it when she went back. I occasionally saw sister-in-law before, so I didn't pay much attention to it. She then looked at Madame Luo, grandmother. Am I thinking too much? No, Wan, it's better to believe it than not. Maybe there really is such a thing. Servants, hurry and get water for eldest young madam to wash her face. Little Wang Shi hurriedly got up. Wang Shi subconsciously reached out to support her. At this moment, she was really anxious and did not care so much. She personally helped little Wang Shi to wash her face. When little Wang Shi came out after washing her face, Madame Luo's face was a little dark. Jingda's daughter-in-law, how much makeup do you usually put on? Little Wang Shi had put on makeup before, and her complexion looked good. But in fact, after washing her face was deathly pale, without a trace of blood. Not to mention Madame Luo. Even Wang Shi, who saw her daughter-in-law every day, only thought that her complexion was good. Now that she thought about it, she was afraid that she put on makeup all the time. If it was really like what Third Last said, then wouldn't it be, grandmother, Little Wang Shi almost cried out. Before she was pregnant, she used a lot of makeup. After she was pregnant, her condition was not very good and her complexion was even worse. She thought that if she looked like this every day, who knew if she would be pitied or disliked? Although her husband was still her cousin, there were beautiful and considerate maids by his side every day. And her complexion. So, she used even more makeup. Other than when she was sleeping at night, her face was always covered with makeup. Could it be that because of this the child in her belly would be harmed? Jingwan saw that little Wang Shi was not quite right, and hurriedly went forward to comfort her. Sister-in-law, don't worry. We still don't know if it's caused by this. Maybe it's not like this at all. If you're anxious, you might frighten the child. Don't worry. Jingwan gently patted her back. Little Wang Shi took a few breaths and slowly calmed down, but she held Jingwan's hand tightly. Third sister, tell me, if it's really caused by the makeup, what will happen? This. Jingwan really didn't know what would happen to pregnant women with lead poisoning, but it was nothing more than premature delivery and miscarriage, causing the child to develop poorly. In serious cases, it might cause deformities. However, little Wang Shi only ingested it through the makeup, so it shouldn't be that serious. Sister-in-law, I'm not sure. However, it's useless for you to think too much. Besides, no one can be sure if it's really caused by the makeup. Why don't you stop using those things for a while? If it's really caused by this, it should be fine if it stopped. If it's not, it won't be a problem. You should rest at ease. Don't let my words make you feel uneasy. Originally, there was nothing wrong, but then, isn't it my fault? Madame Luo's face also softened. Wan is right. Don't think too much. In fact, Wang Shi was also a little anxious, but no one had heard of this before, so naturally, she couldn't blame little Wang Shi. The main reason was that she covered her face with makeup every day. So she thought that even if little Wang Shi went to the doctor and took medicine from time to time, it wouldn't be particularly bad. But who knew that little Wang Shi's face was so pale? Now was indeed not the time to say anything, so she comforted little Wang Shi with a few words. Third sister, I'm sorry. Yesterday, sister-in-law was the only one who didn't get the makeup. I thought sister-in-law had made you dislike her, but I didn't expect that you were doing it for my own good. Sister-in-law was gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Third sister, please forgive me and don't lower yourself to sister-in-law's level. Little Wang Shi, who had regained her calmness, was still the well-educated young lady from a noble family. Jingwan didn't mind and smiled. This is human nature. If it was me, I would also think more. If it was me, I also didn't consider it thoroughly. This matter can't be blamed on you, third girl. You're still a young lady. Your eldest sister-in-law is pregnant. How can you consider everything thoroughly? Wang Shi smiled and said angrily. Jingwan also pursed her lips and smiled embarrassedly. Jingda's wife, go back and rest first. Today, the house is very busy, so you should take care of yourself. But if there's anything, you must not hide it. Understand? Yes, grandmother. Granddaughter-in-law will remember. After little Wang Shi left, old Madame Luo then talked about today's business. Soon, there will be guests coming. You must receive them well and not make the slightest mistake. Next afternoon, Duke Ding's Fu will send the dowry over. There will be a lot of valuable things. Showing off the dowry is one thing, but you must guard it well. If there's a short-sighted person who secretly takes something, our Luo family's face will be completely lost. Mother, don't worry. Granddaughter-in-law has already arranged everything that needs to be arranged. There won't be any mistakes, Wang said. And I'm not worried about you. As old Madame Luo spoke, she glanced at Zhang Shi. Even Zhang Shi couldn't help but feel her face burning. She was marrying a daughter-in-law, but she didn't really do much. Most of the things were arranged by old Madame Luo and Wang Shi. At this moment, she felt very ashamed. Old Madame Luo had long stopped expecting anything from her. If she counted on her, she didn't know how the wedding would turn out. Soon after, old Madame Luo dismissed them and hurried back to eat breakfast. Even Wang sure didn't need to stay behind to serve her. Of course, Jingwan was still an exception. She basically ate her breakfast at old Madame Luo's place every day. She couldn't help but talk about the makeup powder. If it's really because of this reason, when the child is born in the future, it will have to thank you properly. There's no need to thank me. That's its fate. You don't want to take credit for anything. It was Jingwan who felt that she couldn't take responsibility for a life. Just as old Madame Luo said, guests came one after another. However, those who came today were basically close relatives, such as some of the Luo family's relatives who also lived in the capital, the married grandmothers, and the maternal families of the daughters-in-law. Of course, Zhang Shi and Lu Shi's maternal families were not in the capital, and Luo Jinghua's wedding was too rushed. The Zhang family really couldn't make it in time. Although they sent a letter, it would probably take some time for the person and the gift to arrive. There were too many people, so Jingwan couldn't be lazy and came out to help entertain the young ladies. It was said that it takes 100 days to recover from a serious injury. This Yuan Xiao broke her leg, but she still came because of her mother. You're already like this, and you still came out to join in the fun. Can't you stop? Jingwan really wanted to poke her. I'm bored to death at home, and all of you are so busy that you don't have time to visit me. Of course, I have to come out to see such a lively event. You don't know how long I've been nagging my mother to come out. Just wait and see. You'll definitely see Ying Shuang tomorrow. However, based on her grandmother's relationship with old Madame Sun, she'll probably go directly to Duke Ding's residence and then come to the Luo family in the name of sending the bride. Yes, I heard that her eyes have recovered, but I'm really busy and didn't have time to visit her. We all know about your situation, so don't worry about it. However, it's a pity that we didn't get to hear you play the guqin. I heard that your song was amazing and stole the limelight. There's a price to pay for being in the limelight. Jingwan thought about her current situation. Alas, she had to face this troublesome reality even if she didn't care. Yuan Xiao didn't know the reason, but she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. However, Yijia's marriage in the end was really unexpected. She actually married cousin Jingbua. You probably don't know this, but cousin Jingbua is very popular. Let's not talk about other things, just that person and her mother have always had designs on cousin Jingbua. Jingwan looked in the direction Yuan Xiao was secretly pointing at. Second aunt's house was Chang Lingshan, the one who was very close to Luo Jingying. However, maternal grandmother wasn't around at that time, and second aunt and your mother weren't on the same side, so they didn't get along. I heard from my mother that second aunt was so angry at your mother that she fainted several times, but your mother didn't have the self-awareness. She wanted to look for eldest aunt, but maternal grandfather didn't say anything, and your parents didn't ask eldest aunt to look for you, so she could only work in vain. She probably thought that there would be hope once maternal grandmother came to the capital. But in the end, Yuan Xiao laughed even more happily. Her gloating couldn't be more obvious. Especially after cousin Jinghua's painting of 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. She probably couldn't wait to strangle Yijia to death. In her eyes, if Yijia didn't exist, that glory should have been hers. Jingwan could only smile helplessly. Chang Lingshan was really wishful thinking. However, Jingwan was a little puzzled. She wanted to marry my brother, but why didn't she try to curry favor with me when she first met me? Why did she scheme against me? Who knows? Maybe she thinks that you, her sister-in-law, are not important at all. You're right. After all, I haven't seen third brother for several years. In her opinion, she probably doesn't have feelings for him, let alone affect him. If such a person really wanted to marry her brother, not to mention trying to break them up, she would definitely not educate her brother about the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. However, I see that fourth cousin's sister has lost a lot of weight. Is she really ill? What do you think? Forget it if you don't tell me. Anyway, I don't believe it. Seeing Yuan Xiao and Jingwan talking and laughing, many people felt jealous. In fact, they all wanted to talk to Jingwan, but it seemed rude to interrupt. Chang Lingshan almost had the same idea. She was not qualified to go to Great Elder Princess's mansion, but basically all the officials in the capital city knew about Jingwan's affairs. Although Sun Yijiao was worthless, she still knew more nobles. If she could use her to make friends with those nobles, you'd better not daydream. Luo Jingying seemed to have seen through her thoughts and leaned close to Jiang Lingshan's ear. Our Luo family's third young lady is very narrow-minded. If you leave even the slightest bad impression on her, don't expect to be on good terms with her. What's more, I'm the one she hates the most. Do you think that you, who are on good terms with me, will be able to gain her favor? In her eyes, we are probably birds of the same feather. Chang Lingshan's eyes were like knives stabbing at Luo Jingying. Luo Jingying was still smiling. She seemed not to notice Chang Lingshan's eyes at all. In fact, Luo Jingying had been trained by Mrs. Liu for so many years, and it was very effective. It was only when she met Jingwan that she was more likely to lose control. Moreover, after this period of special training, her self-control had improved. Originally, she was a little inferior to Chang Lingshan, but now they were almost equal. Chang Lingshan's eyes only lasted for 2 or 3 breaths, and then he smiled as if nothing had happened. There was no barrier between the two of them. People who didn't know them would really think that they were very close. Jingwan, who had seen everything that the two of them had done, did not make any judgments at all. Jingwan also knew that Yuan Xiao was deliberately talking to her and didn't want others to interfere. However, she was a patient, so she naturally had to take care of her. Seeing that they weren't neglected, she let Yuan Xiao do what she wanted. After lunch, as time went by, the sound of gongs and drums could be heard outside. Today's main event was finally about to begin. One after another, people shouted, "It's coming, it's coming!" Then, the first red dowry was carried into the Luo family's gate, followed by the second. According to the usual rules, the first 2 items should be real estate and land. However, because Sun Yijiao was of noble birth, her dowry was rewarded by the palace. Therefore, the first 2 items were a dazzling red coral tree and 12 jade rui of different shapes. They were all carved from high-quality jade. Just these 2 items were enough to make people click their tongues in admiration. If not, they would just say some sour words. The third item was a tile with the word happiness pasted on it. It was stacked up high, and people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. How much real estate did the dowry have? Then, they looked at the mud bricks wrapped in colored paper. They were so heavy that it seemed to be very difficult for the people carrying them. How much was there? Before they could recover from their shock, the big furniture behind them was carried in one by one. There were 6 double-sided embroidered screens for color glass screens, and then there was a large bed, an Arhood bed, a beauty couch, a dressing table, a zither table, a study table, all kinds of tables, a cabinet on the top, a bookcase, a multi-treasure cabinet, 3 horizontal cabinets, several pairs of chests, various kinds of chairs, and so on. They all came in pairs. There was a whole set of red sandalwood, a whole set of gold-rimmed phoebe, 2 sets of mahogany, rosewood, camphor, and other wood. These pieces of furniture made people's hearts tremble again. Then, there were all kinds of ornaments of different sizes, from large vases that were taller than a person to small cups, bowls, and saucers. There were all kinds of dazzling things that dazzled the 2 people. Then there were whole sets of cosmetic products. Each one was exquisite. The bedding was made of top-grade materials, and the embroidery was exquisite. Not to mention curtains, and other things. Behind them were boxes after boxes of furs and materials. The originally large boxes were stuffed to the brim. It was likely that not even a finger would be able to fit all of them. Then, there were all kinds of jewelry. There were a total of 12 sets of head ornaments. Each set had 12 pieces and more than 20 pieces. There were rubies, sapphires, eastern pearls, southern pearls, top-grade jade, and the most inferior was made of gold. There were also jewelry boxes. There were at least 30 boxes filled to the brim. There were necklaces, bracelets, pearls, and even cat's eye agates. There was probably nothing you could not think of that was not in there. Then there were antiques, calligraphy, and paintings. The most special was probably the flat brocade box that was taken out alone. Everyone guessed that it should be Luo Jingbua's betrothal gift, the painting of 100 birds looking up to the phoenix. There were all kinds of jade and porcelain toys in the back. As for the calligraphy and paintings, because they were rolled up, they couldn't see what they were, but they were certainly not bad. Then, there were more than 10 boxes of books and several boxes of the 4 treasures of the study. Spices and medicinal herbs followed. Ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, snow lotus, glossy ganoderma, and so on. Those boxes were one after another. Looking at them, one could tell that none of them were defective. There were a total of 128 boxes, and they were all real. Even if they were dismantled into 256 boxes, it was more than enough. One could imagine, when these things were all carried into the courtyard of the bridal chamber, how spectacular it would be. Not to mention reaching out to touch, there wasn't even room to step in. Jingwan looked at the dowry. She seemed to have met another big local tyrant. Chapter 114. Even though Madame Luo and the others had already seen the dowry list sent by Duke Dingwa's mansion in advance and had expected this situation, when these things were completely placed in front of them, they still couldn't help but sigh at how generous Duke Dingwa's mansion was. At least, for a short period of time, outsiders would definitely say that the Luo family would rely on Sun Yijia to support them in the future. Of course, Sun Yijia's dowry was enough to support a family like the Luo family for several generations, even if it ran out of money. Although the Luo family definitely wouldn't touch a single cent of Sun Yijia's things. If they had known that Duke Dingwa's mansion would give such a rich dowry to a disfigured girl, the people who wanted to marry her would have trampled all over Duke Dingwa's mansion. Wouldn't it be great to marry her as a decoration and raise a bunch of beautiful girls? Haha, what you said is very reasonable. She's disfigured. I don't think she has the face to be jealous. In my opinion, perhaps it has something to do with Brother Jingbua's current status. He created fine brushwork and is very likely to become a founder of a generation. Just based on this point, I don't know how many people are eyeing him. The dowry given by Duke Dingwa's mansion is thin. I'm afraid that the girl and his family won't have a foothold. They will feel embarrassed. That's right. The male guests outside were discussing like this, and the female guests inside were not much better. There were only 2 kinds of sayings. One was that Duke Dingwa's mansion wanted to boost Luo Jingwa's reputation. The other was that the Luo family had taken a big advantage. In short, no matter which explanation it was, no one was optimistic about the marriage between Luo Jingbua and Sun Yijia. When Luo Jingbua really became famous all over the world, Sun Yijia would probably only be able to wait for death in a corner. Many of these rumors fell into the ears of the Luo family, but no one refuted them. After all, many people in the Luo family had such thoughts. Some people even made fun of him in front of Luo Jingbua, but Luo Jingbua just smiled. Firstly, he really didn't care about Sun Yijia's face. Secondly, he didn't like beauty that much now, and he didn't believe that it would change in the future. Thirdly, he couldn't let down his little sister's expectations. If he married Sun Yijia, he would treat her well for the rest of his life, not because of her dowry, but because of his sincerity. Therefore, no matter how much he said now, it was useless. No one would believe him, so why should he waste his breath? Yuan Xiaoqiao, who her mother called a living ancestor, was being supported by a maidservant at this moment. Most of her body was leaning on Jingwan's body. When she heard the whispers of the people around her, she was extremely angry. Cousin Jingbua is not that kind of person. Jingwan, on the other hand, was calm and composed. What are you angry about? I've already told you that there's no point in discussing these things now. Let's wait another 20 years. My third brother and Yijia won't have to wait that long to see the results. Yuan Xiaoqiao nodded. Her anger was appeased. Wan, look at that person. She seems to be in a good mood. Something's not right. Jingwan glanced at Chang Lingshan. She's just another person who's willing to lower herself. Why do you care about her? Ah, what do you mean, little sister Wan? Without these things, she would probably give up on my third brother. But with these things, Jingwan sneered. Yuan Xiao understood and covered her mouth in disbelief. She wants to be cousin Jingwa's concubine and then take these things for herself? Isn't she being too whimsical? You may think this way, but others won't. I'm afraid that there are many people who have the same thoughts as her. At the end of the day, we're talking about the same thing. Sister Jia should be despised by my third brother. And the person who can win my third brother's favor will naturally be able to take these things for herself. Although these things are Sister Jia's dowry, how many married women can truly use the entire dowry for themselves? In order to win the favor of their husbands and in-laws, there are many who empty out their dowry, right? Sister Jia's situation is even more so. Hence, no one believes that Sister Jia will guard these things so tightly. Once these things are taken out, it's not up to Sister Jia to decide who will get their hands in the end. These people's calculations are too good. So what if they're calculative? It depends on whether my third brother will give them a chance. Jingwan suddenly felt that giving her third brother a lesson to prevent women from re-educating him was too wise. Otherwise, if his third brother fell into a trap, he would have to accept the dowry even if he didn't want to. Jingwan was even looking forward to a good show. When the time came, all of them would be disgraced and embarrassed. Would they regret their actions? On the other side, Wang Shi was busy receiving the people who were delivering the dowry. Her feet basically didn't touch the ground, causing Zhang Shi to feel very embarrassed. Even though she wasn't good at it and didn't know how to deal with it, she still braced herself and went forward to help. After the dowry was exposed and people were addicted to looking at it, they naturally had to tidy it up properly. It was definitely impossible to just leave it in the courtyard like this. Fortunately, because they had expected this situation, they had already tidied up a lot of empty rooms. After Sun Yijia married into the family, she would let her line of people tidy it up properly. At this moment, the dowry servants also came in handy. Although there weren't as many of them as marrying into the prince's residence, they were all carefully selected. They were capable, efficient, and loyal. These were the most basic qualities. The two leading maidservants led the others to express their willingness to help. Of course, Wang Shi couldn't ask for more. These things were all Sun Yijia's, so it couldn't be better if her people handled them. Jingwan also noticed that these two maidservants turned out to be Sun Yijia's senior maidservants. Logically speaking, the 4 senior maidservants who were part of the dowry should come with Sun Yijia tomorrow. Why did 2 of them come first? Jingwan didn't want to ask about this kind of thing. Perhaps there was a purpose for it. Anyway, Jingwan didn't think that they were specially sent to look after the dowry. Although many people would do this, Sun Yijia wouldn't go so far as to do so. There were too many things. By the time they finished tidying up, the day would have passed. Yuan Xiao unceremoniously occupied Jingwan's bed. Jingwan didn't make a fuss when she slept, and she didn't have to worry about being kicked when she fell asleep at night. It was as she wanted. On the other hand, Yuan Xiao's mother, Luo Ronghui, was also helping out. She did not have the time to care about Yuan Xiao. So, she was assured that Yuan Xiao would stay with Jingwan. Then, Yuan Xiao unsurprisingly saw the dark-skinned girl. A dark-skinned person can also be so beautiful. The Qingju really didn't hesitate to sell out her daughter. Yuan Xiao was probably already impressed by Jingwan's various unusual abilities. She didn't feel surprised at all. She just pestered Jingwan for a long time and asked her to put on makeup for herself when she had time. Jingwan had no choice but to agree to her request. Yuan Xiao took advantage of the situation and wanted to do it now. Cousin, we still have work to do tomorrow. Calm down and go to sleep. Yuan Xiao looked at Jingwan sadly. Jingwan smiled and didn't bother to pay attention to her. She changed her clothes and asked Nanny Gong to do her daily care. Yuan Xiao followed to see what was strange. Her wet nurse also looked at Nanny Gong's skills and probably wanted Yuan Xiao to try it. Yuan Xiao saw that Jingwan's skin was as good as her hands and face. Her skin was so good that she couldn't say anything. She was very jealous and complained that Jingwan was unkind and kept half of what she said. Okay, okay. Let your wet nurse learn from Nanny Gong. Yuan Xiao Xiao was satisfied. She lay beside Jingwan and reached out to touch her from time to time. She was still envious and jealous. The servants laughed as they watched. Yuan Xiao Xiao's wet nurse was embarrassed at first, but after hearing Jingwan's words, she learned more seriously. Nanny Gong wasn't stingy and taught Jingwan as she did it. After the two of them fell asleep, Yuan Xiao Xiao wasn't willing to share a blanket and insisted on sharing a blanket with Jingwan. Her hand even touched Jingwan's clothes. Jingwan had been here for more than 10 years, including the previous 10 years, so she was used to sleeping alone. Suddenly, she met such a clingy person. Jingwan chose to forget about that night at the cliff of White Dragon Temple. She was really not used to it now. She grabbed Yuan Xiao Xiao's hand and said, "Cousin, don't move. If you move again, I'll chase you away." Yuan Xiao Xiao pursed her lips. "I'm letting you get used to it. When you get married in the future." She laughed sinisterly. "Wang, you're letting me off easy first." As she said this, she pinched Jingwan's waist. "Cousin," Jingwan's voice rose a bit. Her waist was itchy, a sensitive area. "I'm really angry." Okay, I won't tease you." Yuan Xiao Xiao hugged Jingwan and obediently closed her eyes. After Yuan Xiao Xiao fell asleep, Jingwan shifted to the side and gradually fell asleep. When Nanny Gong came in to check, she saw Yuan Xiao Xiao sleeping like a child and couldn't help laughing. As expected, her daughter was the most worry-free. However, it was because of this that people couldn't help but feel sorry for her. "If His Highness sees you, you'll definitely suffer." Nanny Gong was just about to move Yuan Xiao Xiao further in. "What do you mean by, I'll suffer?" Nanny Gong was shocked by this sudden voice. She turned around and saw a certain king of hell slowly approaching. There wasn't even the slightest sound under his feet. Nanny Gong also knew that there was a gap between her martial arts skills and his. If he didn't want her to find out, she would have to wait until he appeared in front of her. "His Highness." At this time, Li Hongyuan had already seen the situation on the bed. Although he had already noticed that there was another person on the bed, his face darkened when he saw the specific situation. He reached out to strangle Yuan Xiao Xiao. "His Highness." Nanny Gong hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed Li Hongyuan's hand. She knew that if this person saw Miss Yuan, he wouldn't have a good time. However, this person directly wanted to kill her. "His Highness, please reconsider. Let go." Li Hongyuan's murderous intent was still lingering as he grinded his teeth towards Nanny Gong. Nanny Gong, who had always been calm in the face of danger, slowly let go of Yuan Xiao Xiao's hand. Her heart beat wildly, uncontrollably. Before she could say anything, Li Hongyuan suddenly moved quickly and walked into a backlit area. "Nanny." Jingwan's voice was a little hoarse because she hadn't woken up yet. Nanny Gong hurriedly gathered her thoughts. "Miss, did I wake you up?" "No." Jingwan carefully moved Yuan Xiao Xiao's hand away and sat up. "Tidy up the bed. I'll sleep on the bed. I'm used to sleeping alone. I can't sleep well if there's another person beside me." Nanny Gong secretly glanced at the place where Li Hongyuan was. His Highness probably wanted to throw Miss Yuan out at this moment. Nanny Gong tucked Jingwan in. "Miss, please wait for a while. Don't catch a cold." Nanny Gong quickly tidied up the bed and spread it out. She also quickly tucked a few hot water nannies into the bed. Although it was already spring, it was a little cold at night. Moving to a new place would definitely not be as comfortable in the beginning. Jingwan hugged her knees and rested her head on them. She slightly tilted her head and looked at the attentive Nanny Gong. In fact, there was no need for her to do this. It was just a little cold today. Besides, she had always been in good health. It was difficult for her to catch a cold. However, even if she told Nanny Gong would not listen to her. She would usually listen to her grandmother, but when it came to her grandmother's health, she would be stubborn. Nanny Gong, on the other hand, was just as insistent when it came to her health. When Jingwan was looking at Nanny Gong, Li Hongyuan was also looking at her. Perhaps it was because of Jingwan's peaceful and happy smile at this moment, which made him extraordinarily calm in his heart. Therefore, he looked at Jingwan with extraordinarily calm and gentle eyes. It seemed that he would not mind guarding her quietly for the rest of his life. Therefore, let alone Jingwan, if Nanny Gong did not know that there was another person in the room, she probably would not have noticed it. Fortunately, although this person wanted to peep at Jingwan, he would not do anything to hurt her. After Jingwan fell asleep, Nanny Gong lit a soothing incense. Jingwan soon fell asleep. Li Honyuan walked out of the dark, went straight to the bed, and sat down. Since Li Honyuan hired Nanny Gong at the age of 10, Nanny Gong rarely saw Li Honyuan so calm from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, Nanny Gong swallowed the words on the tip of her tongue. Since the first night surveillance, Li Honyuan always appeared from time to time. However, today was not a good time. After all, there were so many people in the Luo family, and because of the wedding banquet tomorrow, many people would not go to bed so early. If they were seen by others, it would be terrible. But now, Nanny Gong really could not say anything. After all, she had watched this child grow up. Even if she did not like some of his actions, she could not help being soft-hearted to him. Li Honyuan quietly looked at Jingwan for a while. Then he took off his outer robe and inner robe, lifted the brocade quilt on Jingwan, lay in it, and then held Jingwan in his arms. Then, Jingwan subconsciously leaned into his arms. Jingwan's reaction greatly pleased Li Honyuan. Not only did he curl up the corners of his mouth, but even his eyes were full of joy. Earlier, she said that she could not sleep well with another person by her side. Now, she took the initiative to lean into his arms. What did it mean? It meant that he was special. It meant that she was slowly getting used to his arms. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility that she was not startled because she was in a deep sleep and was subconsciously familiar with this situation. Li Honyuan reached out to touch Jingwan's face and kissed her forehead. When she could fall asleep in his arms without the soothing incense, perhaps his goal would be basically achieved. Li Honyuan was about to close his eyes and sleep for a while when he inadvertently glanced at the bed. "Throw her out for me. Your Highness, please reconsider. If you throw Miss Yuan out at this time, I'm afraid that others will be alerted." As Mama Gong spoke, she hesitated for a moment before walking over to the bed and lowering the layers of curtains. Li Honyuan snorted coldly. "I don't want this kind of thing to happen again. Other than me, no one else is allowed to sleep on Wan's bed. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Highness," Mama Gong replied. It was not that she was worried about what the King of Hell would do to her if this kind of thing happened again. But if there really was a next time, the King of Hell would definitely silence the person who slept on her bed. She definitely would not let him off so easily like this time. Mama Gong did not say anything else. She took out the lamp and quietly left. The night passed quietly like this. When Jingwan woke up the next day, she did not feel that anything was wrong. Because she had always slept well, she never suspected anything. Without any delay, she directly got up and started her morning exercise without any hesitation. After half an hour, Jingwan was sweating all over. Seeing Jingwan like this, Yuan Xiaoqiao's wet nurse could not help but ask Jingwan's wet nurse, "Is your daughter always like this?" "That's right. I had something to do today, so there wasn't enough time." Yuan Xiaoqiao's wet nurse could not help but glance at Jingwan's room. She did not need to look to know that her daughter must be sleeping like a little pig right now. It would take a lot of effort to wake her up. She could not help but sigh. Resigned to her fate, she prepared to wake her daughter. Jingwan took a comfortable bath. With the help of her servant girls, she changed her clothes and freshened up. Then she began to eat breakfast because she did not have to pay respects today. When Yuan Xiaoqiao appeared with a yawn, Jingwan was almost done eating. "Wan, you're up so early?" Jingwan did not respond. She only pointed at the seat opposite her, indicating for her to sit down. Yuan Xiaoqiao sat down with the help of her servant girls. Seeing the food on the table, she said, Wan, you're eating something so simple." Jingwan finished the porridge in her bowl and wiped her mouth. "Eat something light for breakfast. It's good for the body." As soon as she finished speaking, the servant girls brought Yuan Xiaoqiao's breakfast. Yuan Xiaoqiao's nose twitched. It looks simple, but it smells so good. Jingwan told her to drink the bloodbird's nest porridge first before eating the rest. This was probably Yuan Xiaoqiao's first time eating such a simple breakfast. However, she felt that it was very delicious. At least she ate twice as much as she usually did at home. Because she usually ate very little, she did not have much of an appetite in the morning. Today, she ate so much that she did not feel bloated. However, even so, Yuan Xiao still found that Jingwan ate more than she did. Wan, I didn't know you could eat so much. Aren't you afraid of getting fat? Jingwan naturally knew that she did not have a huge appetite. She probably only ate 1/3 more than the average girl. I won't get fat. She exercised every day. Although she usually only exercised in the morning, when she had nothing to do, she would exercise during the day and night. She did not have a body that gained weight easily. Naturally, it was impossible for her to get fat. A few years ago, because I was growing, I ate a lot. My flesh also grew. My mother made me abstain from eating. How painful it was to want to eat, but not be able to. I just need to move a little more. The table was cleaned up. Miss, fourth young lady brought the other girls over. It's so early in the morning. They're quite active. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.